Rohtak, Haryana. And for chief guest of this session is the Professor Madhubala Ma'am, former professor of Chinese Studies at Department of East Asian Studies, University of Delhi. And for presidential address, we have a Professor Ashok Pankaj Sir, former director, Council for Social Development, New Delhi. And now I would like to call President of Indian Research Scholar Association, Vikas Kumar Sir, for welcome address. Over to you, Vikas Sir.
Okay, thank you so much, Sakshi. Uh, so, uh, First of all, uh, I would like to congratulate to the entire team of the India Research Scholars Association for taking the good initiative. And I would like to welcome to Honorable former Vice Chancellor Sir R.S. Yadav Sir. Sir has accepted our invitation very easily and given his consent to deliver the keynote address in our inaugural session. So I would like to welcome to Professor Madhu Bhalla Madam, eminent scholars and on the field of the international relation, and ma'am is a former professor, Delhi University, and madam is currently serving as a chief editor, India Quarterly Scopus Journal. So, on the behalf of the Indian Research Scholars Association and on the behalf of me, I would like to welcome to Professor Madhu Madam. I would like to welcome to Professor Pankaj Sir, Ashok Pankaj Sir, former director, CST, and now he is serving as a managing editor, Samajik Bimars Sage publication. Uh, in the welcome in this welcome series, I would like to welcome to the all participants who have joined this workshop, the various parts of the India. So today, because we have eminent speaker, so I will not take more time. Just I request to again Ms. Sakshi for the further proceeding. Thank you so much, sir. And मैं एक information just I want to share information among the participants and the scholars. When I was the student of the MA first year and second year, that time I had read the book of the Professor R.S. Yadav sir because sir is belong from the political science background. तो उस समय भारतीय विदेश नीति में जो सर की पुस्तक है मैंने उसको पढ़ा था. सो आज उनको सुनने का मौका मिल रहा है. इट्स रियली प्रिविलेज फॉर मी एंड आल्सो फॉर द ऑल पार्टिसिपेंट्स कि हम सर को सुन सकेंगे. सो ओवर टू यू साक्षी जी. मैं ज्यादा वेट नहीं करना चाहूंगा क्योंकि हमारे पास अच्छे स्पीकर हैं. थैंक यू सो मच.
Thank you, Vikas sir. Before further proceeding, sir, over to you, Professor R.S. Yadav sir. We are eagerly waiting for your valuable words. So over to you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Saks. Professor Pankaj, and all the office bearers of Indian Research Scholar Association. First of all, I am thankful to the association that they have invited me to share some of my views with the youngster who are engaged in the research activities. So, in this keynote address, basically, I'll be talking to the young scholars the problems of research in social sciences and ethical issues. So, very fundamental, basic questions I am raising because sometime I feel while evaluating the PhDs and the other reports, then I find sometime, though they are basic things are missing in the writings of the scholar. So, how to choose the topic till the finalization of the research report? I hope that will be of some use to the scholars. So, first issue that comes to a research scholar, that is the problem of selection of the topic. conducting the topic, southern part of the various universities I visited, that scholars used to ask teachers to tell us about the topic. But basically, I feel that should not their interest finalize in which area they want to specialize. You know, there are number of themes and sub themes in the political science. So scholar must be clear the area of interest, because without your interest, you cannot prolong for 3 years on a topic which may not be of interest to you. But when you are deciding the interest, you should keep in mind the availability of the source material also, because you cannot do research on the topic where scarce material is available. So a preview of the resource material should also be taken by the candidates before finalizing the topic. And in that sense, two, three more things they have to understand about the discipline of your. Then, if it is an interdisciplinary nature topic, then you must have the basic knowledge of all the concept used in across that discipline, because every discipline have different connotation of the same concept sometimes. So you must be categorically clear. Another thing in the topic, the student should also take in mind the time and space, because you cannot uh, do research on a topic which is of huge time consuming, because you have a 3 year span basically. So you must choose a topic in the sense that you may be able to complete in that time span of your PhD. And if the topic is of historical nature, sometimes you take the topic of historical nature, then definitely you must bear in mind the linkage of that historical nature should connectivity with your relevance with the present, because otherwise there is no fun in doing research in that until unless it is relevant today. So is there any linkage there, then you can take that historical topic, otherwise you should also avoid that. Then also you have to think about the title of the paper, or title of the your research, the nature of the problem you are. It should be concrete, it should be specific, and it should not be repetitive of the earlier works, or and it should have some relevance in the present and the future. That thing also be there in mind. Another thing the candidate need to have is about the material, because the source material is language. Because if it is in a language other than your known, means other than Hindi and English, then you must have proficiency of that language, so that you can consult the source material or primary sources of that research. And also you have to understand the concept used in that domain. And finally, you must have a clarity about the main title and subtitle, because sometime I feel a candidate is developing more of the chapters on the main title, and subtitle is getting lesser space. Whereas if you look at generally a study of something, that is the generally subtitle, that should get more emphasis or more space in your PhD than the main title, because main title work as a framework, and the subtitle is an in-depth study of that subject you are taking. So these are the preliminary things every researcher should think of before selecting the topic. Otherwise, so don't take topic casually, or don't take topic just you have listened to. Rather, these preliminaries have to be done before selecting the topic. But you are all already registered scholar, you must have across that line. But even if somebody is thinking or yet to finalize, then he or she should bear in mind that how to select the topic. This is the one point I wish to share with all the youngsters. Second point I wish to share with you about the problem of sources, because there are two three types of sources are there: primary sources, secondary sources, and e-sources. Three types of things are there. If you come to the primary sources, that is that also based on two type of work. One work is on the library kind of analytical study, and other are empirical studies. If you are taking the library type work or bibliography type work, then you must consult basic bibliography on the theme, and also select the libraries where these things are available, archives or archival material you have to see, and also about the manuscript available, about the government documents available, all these things how you will avail, that is must, because without those primary sources you cannot. Then you come to the secondary sources. Secondary, you know about the books written by scholars, about the articles written by the scholars, and other selected reports or documents or legislative readings and all these things. So both primary and secondary source availability must be ensured. So a preview of the bibliography should be jotted down so that you may have an idea what kind of sources are available and how you are going to tap those sources during the course of study. If it is the empirical work, then you have to be serious about the a choice of the sampling, because most of the time if your sampling techniques are wrong, then your inferences or the result may not be sound. So in that sense you have to choose not merely the random, because that is a convenient, but that is most unscientific in that way. You have to choose specifically techniques which are of sound. So which sampling technique, structured techniques or non-structured questionnaire, that should also be bear in mind. So the questionnaire framing and the sample size techniques you choose, that is very important, because with the, and during that, how to conduct the interview, how to frame the questionnaire, and how you decipher what your respondent is saying in the correct language or in the correct mindset, that is also essential in kind of empirical study. Because in empirical study your data is the source of all your PhD writing. So that is the final. So you have advantage that you have the finality, but that advantage come only if you are very careful in choosing the sample, and how, and so your universe should be decided very scientifically, and questionnaire should be made very structurally, not open-ended questions, and interview should be taken in the proper spirit, that should be there. As regard to the uh, secondary sources, you know all the books, article and other material available in the library, but here also you have to take care of plagiarism. And third is e-source. When you are tapping the e-source, authenticity should be ensured, because most of the source may not be authentic. Authenticity or Wikipedia type source should not be consulted. So authenticity of sources will there, and also you denote the when you have consulted the date and time, you should note that when you have retrieved that material, because sometimes that material may not be available at the later stage. If somebody want to verify, then it becomes problematic. So whatever you source is there, you have to take into consideration two three things, that biases should be avoided, particularly in the empirical study, and competence of the interviewer should be there, and interpolation of the data should be scientifically, and also you have to avoid any kind of plagiarism type of the things. So this is the second thing every scholar have to bear in mind regarding the problem of the sources you have to take. Third consideration a researcher should make is the methodological issues. How you tackle the methodology. As I have talked to you earlier, two types of works you are doing. Either you are doing analytical studies, PhD through the analytical work, or you are doing empirical. Analytical, I have told you that how you make sure that authenticity of material, primary sources, clarity about the language and logic, and causal relationship. And you have not merely described the phenomena, and you have to develop a causal relationship. In that sense, you have to read most of the reports and writing between the lines. What is the backdrop of that writing? You must understand that, because merely you should not accept all these lines which are just written. You have to go beyond that. And in the empirical, you have to be more clear, more sound, because here you are the boss of the data. You are the source of generating the data. That advantage is there. But here I said your sampling techniques matters a lot. How you sample and how you structure the questionnaire. So stratified sampling should be there, systematic should be there, and you should have that sampling which can give you the scientific result. And here also your own judgment should not be, you should be having a value free kind of and not convenient rather than what your exact facts required. So your own biases should not be there. So in that sense, value free should be there, and you should also try to theorize those data. Some trends and theories should be developed, because merely presenting a data is not enough. That data should provide some trends, and particularly that trend should also give some theoretical orientation. Because if you are taking a micro study, that it should be have a linkage with the macro issue of that problem, so that an understanding of the new phenomena could be there, or your contribution or your addition to that research could be acknowledged. Another point is regarding the review of literature. Most of the time, I have studied number of PhDs that generally students do disjointed review, just one after the other. They scattered, they take one issue, then other, and sometimes independent type of observation regarding every work is there. So that should be avoided. What is the basic purpose of the review? As we have told, and you must also be aware, that is not something new I am telling, that basic purpose of the review is that it should give you the picture that what are the research gap left over in the earlier study on the theme which you are studying or exploring. What are the earlier researcher have left gap? Because otherwise you cannot make a repetitive study. So some gaps are there, and how your study is going to fulfill that gap, because that is the only justification of your writing PhD. If you don't able to that, then justification is not there. Because on the same thing number of studies have been done, but your study should differentiate in that sense that you are adding something, or you are giving some new interpretation, or you are fulfilling some gaps, then it is justified. Otherwise not. So basic purpose of the review, sometime I feel when I study the review one after the another, uh, brief about the works is there, and then it ended without any concluding para. That is wrong. That concluding para is the gist of that your review of literature, and that should give clear picture of the two things, that what are the gaps you are finding on all the studies done earlier to you, and how your studies going to fulfill that gap. That provides justification. So this is another issue you face and you have to take care of. Then another issue is regarding the problem of writing the thesis. How to write the thesis, that also is a problematic, because sometimes the way you write, the way you present, that makes a difference. And sometimes while consulting the work, you are studying some scholar and you find this is idea is also in your mind, but the kind of presentation you find that is missing. You cannot do that. So in that, there are 8, 9 things you have to bear in mind while writing. Number one is the clarity. You must have a clarity of thought. You should not be ambiguous. You should not write just for saying writing, or just taking some word or some sentence from this place or some that place. That should not be clarity of issue. Second is the brevity. Brevity is the art. You are reading so much book, so much literature, then how briefly you can communicate, how to the point you can, the brevity should be there. And third is the correctness. Here you have not to manipulate the facts. You have to be correct. You have to be honest on making. Another is the diction. Diction is the appropriateness of the word use in your thesis. And particularly for that, you consult the Advanced Learners Dictionary, where every word has a 4 or 5 meaning, but that is used in a specific context. So you should develop that sense in which sense this kind of terminology is being used. Then what are the prepositions used in that? Then the style of writing, that should be neat, rich, tasteful. That should also be taken care. Then acknowledgement of source. Whatever source you are using, that should be acknowledged, because that is the honesty. That some ideas you have taken from somebody, you acknowledge that. That means you agree to that idea. You also have same idea, but due credit be given to the person from where you have studied it. Then about the quotations, only brief quotations should be there, and they should be there only where necessary. Unnecessarily, you should not quote, or you should not give long quotations. Very short and accurate quotation, and quotation should be exact. Sometime if you cite from somebody else, then give cited from that and that work, because that quotation may not be exact. In that case, the liability goes to that person from where you have cited. So that kind of things is the. And uniformity in regarding footnotes, heading, subheading, that uniformity should be maintained throughout the thesis. And then about the conclusion, you should answer all the questions you have raised in your introduction. Your conclusion should give that the issues you have raised as a hypothesis, whether it is a proved or disproved, or as the objective questions you have raised during the introduction, that should answer. And conclusion should not be quoted from somebody. No uh, quotation or nothing of that should be there. It should be your own findings of whatever you have done it. So that should be the basis of your writing. So how to write your thesis, that should be there. Another thing is regarding the citation and footnote, because these days I find most of the students and sometimes teachers also, they are very casual in footnoting and all this. But after your PhD, you may write whatever the way you like, but in PhD, it is required that your footnote, citations, and all things should be appropriate, should have the methodological correctness of the things. Otherwise, that is not accepted. First thing you do it, that your sources of every direct quotation should be have a source. You cannot give quotation without source. You have to reveal the source as a footnote of that quotation. Authenticity of statement you have to ensure. As I said, if you are quoting somebody, try to see the original quote. So authenticity of that statement should be there. And acknowledge each and every one, wherever you use their conclusion, their interpretation, their writing, their thinking, their idea. Kindly do give credit to those scholars from where you have. Amplify the points where you want, but it should not burden the text. Sometimes more details about that should be given in footnote, rather text should not be burdened. So your reading should be smooth. Your reader should not get embezzled in the trivial details you are adding. Though trivial details or another side tracking details should be given in footnote rather than the main text. And if you are, it should be uniform and simple in all methodology. And you should also adopt the style of either bold or italics, the books, journal, newspaper, or wherever required. The italics word in computer is there. Earlier it should be bold, now it is italics will work. So that should also be taken care of, because your footnoting and all that should be correct. Another thing is regarding the proportionate of coverage. Sometime, as I've told, you take a problem with the main topic and having a sub topic. For example, if you take India's foreign policy, colon, a study of Modi's era. So you have to give only one or two chapter on India's foreign policy, and maximum 70 to 75% should be given on Modi's foreign policy, because that is your main study. Sometimes I find in some thesis the work is done reverse. So that is incorrect. So your first title is just a framework that you are looking to Modi's foreign policy in the context of India's foreign policy framework. So that framework should at least have a one, because two chapter maximum. One chapter is introductory, giving all the details of the hypothesis, scope, review, everything. And second is theorizing that framework. And the rest of the three, four, five chapters should be on the study where you are giving detail, in-depth study of that. So that should also be there in proportion. And finally, the question of ethics is on also involved these days, because if you want to be research in a very sincere manner, then some ethical issues should be there. Some ethical issues comes in the descriptive study or analytical study. What are the ethics demand is four or five things. One is acknowledge all the sources, as I have told you, that if you are doing library work or the critical work consulting the other authors, then acknowledge them. Second is verify primary sources. Every source should be verified. And third is the avoid value biases, and your own biases should not be there if you are taking somebody's ideas. And take care of plagiarism. Plagiarism is a very
हेलो
serious issue.
जी सर
Don't take borrow anything without
कोई नहीं
quotation or
सर अभी
without
तो
authentication.
कोई प्रॉब्लम
And
नहीं है
footnote
आधे
and
घंटे में
reference
पहुंचेंगे
should be
तब फिर कर
verifiable.
देंगे
If somebody want to verify from your footnote and references,
जी सर हो
that
जाएगा
one is able to
कोई नहीं
verify. So that kind of things should be
जी
there
जी
in analytical study.
मैंने सर
If you are doing
लिंक भेज दिया
empirical
है सर
study,
आपके ग्रुप में
then
उसमें
your
टेक्स्ट
ethics
मैसेज
is
में
your questionnaire and knowledge
फिर
about the
बताइएगा
respondent
ठीक
should
ठीक
be correct. To whom you are contacted, what are the details of that person to whom you have interviewed, that should be very authentic. Secondly, exact understanding of what your respondent is saying, because sometimes respondent may not be using your language. For example, if you are taken an interview of a worker or labor or some marginalized section, they may talking about in their own language, dialect. Then you have to appropriate understanding of that language and dialect to represent or making interpolation of his idea. Vague questions should be avoided. Vague questions should not be asked, because then otherwise tabulation will be a problematic. You cannot tabulate them in that sense. Sincerity of data collector. Data should be collected by the authors himself or herself, not by some relatives or friends. Sometimes it happen. That should not be. The sincerity is there, and that also use of scientific tools in interpretation of data, like SPSS package. When you are just not the mathematical of 8th 7th arithmetic, you are using 10% doing the 20% doing this. No, it should be with the scientific tools now are available in social sciences. So your social sciences research tools should be applied to give the correctness of that. So these are the few things that this morning I thought I should share with you in these 30 minutes allotted to me. So I want to take just the similar time, not to across, because you have other research scholars and question asking people, or maybe two more resource person are there. So these are the basic things I'm sharing. So every researcher should have the clarity of all these issues. Then definitely his or her journey will be very smooth till the writing of the thesis. So with that, I again thank you all for listening, and also thanks the association for inviting me. Thank you very much.
थैंक यू सो मच सर for the keynote address. So now I would like to invite to Professor Madhu Bhalla madam for the chief guest address.
Thank you, sir. Vikash. And thank you very much for inviting me to your session here. Um, and I must say that a privilege to cover, but and very extensively. So I will not cover that, but I'm going to talk about my experience as somebody who has conducted research, as somebody who has supervised research, and as somebody who, in the last 8 years, as editor of India Quarterly, has seen a lot of research papers coming to us, both by younger scholars and by senior scholars, right? So, you know, what I wish to say is that I think the research domain is very exciting these days, right? Uh, we have many more scholars thinking outside of established traditions. And I think the field of IR, international relations, foreign policy, has opened up in many, many very exciting ways. For example, we don't just talk about government to government relations now. I think we talk about climate change and what is happening there, how it's affecting transnational relations. We talk about political economies and how they're affecting transnational relations. Um, we talk about AI and technologies, for example, and we talk about energy. So, in one sense, I think we have uh, created an entirely new domain, at least addressed entirely new domain, where nations interact, communities interact, and people interact, and experts interact to shape the kind of policies that shape our world today. So, in one sense, I think the
Ma'am,
domain of
ma'am,
IR,
perhaps
foreign policy,
your
yeah,
hello, ma'am. Perhaps your
it's
video
not
is
clear.
not. No, your voice is clear, but I think video is you have not opened, ma'am.
Okay,
वीडियो हाँ आप आपको हम देख नहीं पा रहे हैं वीडियो नहीं ओपन है शायद
I
आपका
will just open it.
यस
अब
यस
आप
नाउ
देख
नाउ
पाते हैं,
यस 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 मैम यस
ठीक
यस
है?
थैंक यू मैम
Okay,
थैंक यू
okay,
फॉर
fine.
थैंक यू
So just 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 give me a second. I need to get my dog to be quiet. Just one second because she is barking and she will disturb all of us. Preeti,
यस
Preeti,
श्योर मैम
doggy को अंदर ले आओ. हाँ, sorry. उसको
यस
अंदर ले
यस
आओ. वो चिल्ला रही. Sorry. So, okay, so as I said, the domain of IR has become very exciting. There are many more ways of looking at transnational relations. There are many more ways of doing this, in academic research. And there are many more communities of academic researchers to which younger academics can connect. Given that, I find that despite the much larger domains, the much more exciting areas, the much more innovative kind of research that is now being demanded and can be done, I find that we are not quite up to the mark, right? Both at the levels of the university and the research that is going on at the university, or at the levels of think tanks with which I have been associated for a long time, or even at the level of independent research that is coming into journals. Okay, and not to sound terribly, what should I say, non-positive about this, but I think we need to raise the bar in many ways, and I think that we are capable of doing that, which is why I feel a bit sad that the bar is not being raised enough, right? That we are not critiquing or self-critiquing our work in a manner in which we can expect to do a little bit more and a little bit better. Okay, so I will point out some of the issues that I think need to be addressed by younger scholars, mid level scholars, and also senior scholars, mind you. I mean, at the journal, we have had to refuse many papers from senior scholars in various universities because they don't meet our criteria. Our younger scholars sometimes, you know, meet them very well. And we have published a lot more younger scholars over the last few years than we have published senior scholars over the last few years, which raises many questions about where, what whom should junior scholars look up to, right? And I think junior scholars need mentors. Researchers need mentors, and the mentors are just not doing their job. Okay, I'm being very harsh about my own colleagues, and they have been my colleagues in various universities. But I do feel that they are just not doing their jobs of proper supervision, of proper mentoring, and of literally helping younger scholars to raise the bar and to expect more from younger scholars. So, as I go through all the work, and I know I have, since I have retired from the university, and since also being in the university, and I have taught in both JNU as well as in Delhi University, I find that the level of, I mean, there are a couple of problems, fundamental problems in research that come across my table. One is the complete lack of conceptualization, right? When scholars are asked to define a problem, right, there is very little conceptualization around that problem. Okay. For example, if somebody wants to do China's foreign policy and, uh, or let's say something on China's economy, right, there is very little conceptualization from the perspective of political economy, right? And political economy is a very rich field, as all of you know. Okay. So there is Marxist political economy, there is liberal political economy. So there's a whole domain out there, but there's very little conceptualization around political economy, from political economy, around China's political economic, interactions. Okay. Secondly, uh, just to give you another example, uh, when scholars write me papers on culture, right, culture and foreign policy, there is again very little conceptualization about what culture and foreign relations actually means, right? And all you have to do is actually go back to Foucault, okay? All you have to do is look at the way culture acts as power within societies, between societies, within communities. Okay, so most papers on culture will talk about Bollywood as a cultural strength of India, right? They rarely ever talk about how Bollywood either suppresses or overtakes other cultural forms in other countries, for example, in Pakistan or in Bangladesh or even in Africa, right? And what that means to local communities and how they then see Indian culture. Okay. So culture is not a neutral concept. There is a whole power play embedded in cultural practices. But very little of that comes through, very little of that conceptualization, very little of that theoretization comes through in the papers that cross my desk on culture. Right. Thirdly, I find that uh, most scholars, and I put this down to the lack of methodology, sound methodology courses in universities, you know, lack a very good hold on methodologies, right? What they understand by methodology is the way you read your stuff, the way you put together your sources, mostly that. So they say quantitative and qualitative methodologies, right? I think they really go beyond that. Uh, or they will talk about the three IR methodologies, which is, liberalism, realism, and constructivism. Okay. Uh, I do think that because IR is a very inclusive discipline, Okay, you can use multiple methodologies as IR scholars. Therefore, there is a need to be very clear on the methodologies that you are using and what constitutes methodologies, not methods, but methodologies, because every methodology raises significant questions that you must then, answer, right? And it provides you with insights into your material and insights into the problems that you raise. So I think the distinction between methodologies and methods is very, very significant. And it needs to be brought to the forefront when you're doing research. Okay. Uh, Thirdly, and this is something that I also find uh, very saddening, is that the quality of research seems to have, I don't know whether it's gone down or whether it hasn't gone up, right? Uh, I do think that a lot more scholars um, are are cutting corners on research. They are taking from sources which have used that research material while not themselves looking at the primary research materials, and they are doing a cut and paste job of most of their writings. Now that uh, cut and paste job in writing, you know, it comes through very clearly. It can't be hidden. Okay. So if I, with my 45 years of experience in academia, are reading a thesis or a paper, I will be able to spot it at once. And if I feel that there is a cut and paste job here, the integrity of the scholar, then, it's questionable. So, I mean, I begin to question the authenticity of that research, the integrity of that research, and I begin to question then where the scholar is coming from. So, therefore, that's a no-no for me. Right? For any editor or for any, senior scholar who is, judging something, a research paper, that's a black mark. It's not a good thing to do. So I think the research should be authentic. I think people really should learn to read and read seriously. And this is one of the questions that I would raise with my class in JNU. My first class in JNU with my MPhil scholars and my MA scholars would be how to read a book, right? We all read books, but how do we actually read a book critically, right? And I suggested then to them that the first two assignments they should do, should be book reviews, because that's basically teaching you how to read a book, how to ask questions about what the author has done, and how to critically evaluate what the author has written. Everything within that is published is not sacrosanct. So scholars must not accept that anything that is published is fine and they can just accept it. They must question that, right? So we learn to read a book. Okay. And when you learn to read a book, then you will be critical about what the author is saying. You will have your own mind will work in terms of raising questions about what the author is saying. And you can then go to the next book and see whether, that debate has been extended in any way. Okay. Which brings us to the whole review of literature that Professor Yadav spoke about. And I entirely agree with him that the review of literature in most theses is absolutely the pits, right? And I'm using a very colloquial word for it, which you will understand. Okay. It is absolutely the pits, because most of these reviews of literature are actually annotations of books. They are not a discussion of the book. And they are not a discussion of the book in relation to the debate that the author, that the researcher is hoping to raise in the thesis. Okay. So please do not write a book report in a book review, in a review of literature. Do not annotate the book, i.e., tell me what the book is about. I know what the book is about. I want to know how this book is significant in the debate in which you are engaged in your thesis. Okay. And also, how you intend to either support what the author is saying or how you intend to move away from the author is saying and take a different position. Okay. So the review of literature, I think, is very significant. And I think it goes back to this issue of how to read a book, okay, which is the simplest first task that any researcher must learn to do. Okay. Read a book, read it critically, ask questions about the author, ask questions about what he or she is saying, and evaluate it in your own mind, in your own terms. Okay. So that's the other thing. The next thing about research is the use of data, right? When people say that they are doing quantitative research or they are depending on quantitative research, much of the data is basically picked up from other published sources. Okay. Very little of the data depends on the researcher's own survey or the researcher's own collection of data, and then putting it together, tabulizing it, or putting it together, in a form in which it's significant for the thesis itself or for the argument itself. Okay. Um, Secondly, I think researchers tend to cut corners on what data that they use. They rarely ever go to the raw data that, say, for the economic survey puts out, for example, or the China Statistical Survey puts out, for example, right? So very little of that actually happens. So I think they have to be really, really careful about what they mean by quantitative research here. And I think that Professor Yadav had a good point when he said that your survey framework should be appropriate, should be compatible, and should have some integrity. Okay, so all of these issues are very significant in terms of quantitative research. And the fourth thing that I want to talk about is the use of archives, right? In the recent past, the last few years, uh, history has been so distorted uh, that it is very important for scholars to go back to the archives and to configure for themselves what actually was the historical narrative, how to construct a historical narrative based on archival
No
sources,
need to
not
scroll
just on
more.
people's opinions, on
No need to scroll
ideologies,
more.
and biases, but actually on
First,
what happened in the past. Okay, so there is a very significant dissing of Nehru. There's a significant dissing of the 70 years of our existence as a republic, right? But you and I would not have been where we are if something good had not happened. Okay, India would not have been in the position that it is if something good had not happened in these 70 years, right? After all, we set the basis for industrial state. We had our 5-year plans. We had a green revolution. People's, GDP increase. Acknowledge that we are still a poor country, but we are not as poor as we were in 1947, where our foreign exchange was had hit rock bottom, and where our foreign trade was 0.5%, right? From 30% in the 18th century to 0.5% in 1947, okay, of the world trade. So we as a country have grown since then. And I want you all to go back to the archives and look at the archives, look at the reports, look at the debates, look at what happened in Parliament, who was saying what, and then make up your own minds as to how history has led us to this point. Okay. So I think the archives are very important. Don't take anybody's word for it. Don't take my word for it or your word for it or third person's word for it. Go to the archives, see what history tells you actually, right? And write your own histories of that time and relate them to the present. Okay. And I think Dr. Yadav was very good when he said that you have to relate history to the present. Right? So relate it to the present. You will get a perspective on the present that will be very deep and very reflective and very useful for future generations. Okay. and also for policymakers. Uh, Additionally, I think that when you're doing research and you're putting together bibliographies, etc., and I think that putting together a bibliography before you actually start your research is a very good idea because it tells you about the amount of material that is available to you. And I think for this, you need to use search engines. And there are many, many search engines that you can use. Google Scholar is one of them, but there are many more. And I think if you look at the net, you will find all of these research engines that you can use. So, putting together a bibliography at the outset gives you an idea of who's writing, how much literature there is in the field, whether it has been the field has been exhausted, or whether there is still scope for you to do more in this field. Okay, so that's always a very good, very practical thing to do. Okay, finally, field research. I think field research is something that IR scholars don't do much of, right? They depend a lot on government documents. They depend a lot on secondary literature and on primary literature at times, but not a lot of, for example, interviews of ambassadors, ex-ambassadors, policymakers. Partly in India because younger scholars do not have access to them, partly because they are diffident about connecting with them. But I will tell you one thing that policymakers would are more than happy to talk to younger scholars than they are to senior scholars, right? So I think you should reach out to policymakers, you should reach out to senior ambassadors, you should reach out to the MEA, and you should actually talk to people who are in the field at that point, and who have a perspective on these things to see how this plays into your own research. Okay, and the thing is also to verify this. Don't take their word for it because sometimes ex-ambassadors uh, s- will tell you that they did everything well, and then the outcome of that particular situation has not been positive. So you need to verify what ex-ambassadors or policymakers are saying to you with facts on the ground, with other empirical evidence. So you can then manage to sort of get a perspective of your own in terms of what actually happened at a particular time. Okay? Uh, Finally, I think that you know in coming back to methodologies, and this is my favorite thing because I think without some view on some clarity on methodologies, we are not going to go anywhere. There is, I think Professor Yadav pointed out, there is a dichotomy between empiricism and interpretation. Okay, the methodologies that rest on empiricism are the ones Hans Markenthau or Stephen Walls, etc. Right, but there is also a lot of methodologies today that depend on or based on interpretive uh, narratives, right? Robert Cox, for one. And these deal with identities, norms, culture, ideas, with which I think it's a huge and vastly exciting domain in IR today, right? So while you want to be able to balance off empiricism with interpretation, okay? But I think that the interpretive methodologies are much more exciting, are much more open, ask many more new kinds of new questions, and deal not with just government to government relations, but people to people relations. As I said, climate change, political economy, culture, uh, the ways in which communities interact with each other, refugees, for example, conflict coming out of social divisions, for example, right? All of that, religion, for example, all of this is open to interpretive, is based really, gains a great deal from interpretive methodologies. So that's something you might want to look into. And I think you would gain a lot from looking into that. Because as younger scholars, when you move into these newer areas, you need to have some kind of conceptual clarities and some kind of concepts which will raise the questions that you want to answer. Okay. I'm going to end there because I think I have taken up half an hour, despite the fact that I thought I would not. But thank you very much for having me. But I also want to correct one thing because I am since the 1st of December, I am no longer with the India Quarterly. There will be a new editor, and you should all send papers to the new editor. Okay. Thank you very much.
Uh, where, ma'am? Where can you? Yes, ma'am. Uh, but ma'am, just you are talking about the research journal, ma'am.
Yes, India Quarterly. India
Yes,
Quarterly. That's right.
India Quarterly. Yes,
Yes,
yes, yes, yes, yes.
that's right. Yeah.
So
So from the 1st of
yes, yes, yes.
December, I will no longer be with the India Quarterly, but you will have a new editor. I think Chidamani Mahapatra from JNU, right, who will be the new editor. So you must all send your papers to him
Yeah. Okay, okay, ma'am. So in present time, ma'am, you are editor of the Indian Quarterly. I think just I have seen your name.
till the 30th, till the 30th of November.
Oh, okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am. Okay,
Yeah,
then fine.
yeah.
So, thank you so much, ma'am,
No worries.
for your valuable chief guest address. So, just I think Professor Pankaj sir is here. So, yeah, yeah, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, boss.
Yes, sir. Sir, Professor Madhu Balla, ma'am, is here, and just sir. Thank you for joining this, sir. You're most welcome, sir. And just I would like to invite to Professor Ashok Pankaj, sir, for the presidential remark. Over to you, Pankaj, sir.
Thank you, Ambikas, for inviting me for this important deliberation on of research scholars on methodological aspects of social science research in India. Uh, I'll just speak a little bit about objectivity and subjectivity in social science research and how various disciplines under social sciences have placed this debate and to do more scientific research. Uh, to begin with, let me start with the context. Immediately uh, after the Second World War, or we can say so that in the middle of the 20th century, most of the countries started looking for a new phase of development. Before that, it was largely development pursued by some of the select capitalist countries. But this was also an era in which a large number of Afro-Asian countries became independent and they wanted to pursue growth and development of their own country. They fashioned their own development models in some of the country as well. But most of the countries were also not real sure about the various challenges of development, largely because till now there was not much emphasis on empiricism or data collection in social science research. When we go back to the classical period or classical uh, political theorist or classical economist, they were pursuing some ideas. They were throwing some ideas. They were throwing some issues. They were giving some theory as well. But large scale data, use of large scale data, was still missing in social science research or social sciences. Partly also because the problem before, we can say that middle of the 20th century was different, and partly also because there was not much emphasis on data and empiricism. But post Second World War, there was a shift in social science research. There was a great deal of emphasis on empiricism, great deal of emphasis on data collection, because there were new societies which had come up, and these new societies were changing. So, from all, whether it is economists, whether it is political scientists, or it is sociologists, there was a rush to study new societies. At the same time, there were changes happening at a much faster pace in even developed countries, because developed countries also went through traumatic experience of Second World War. Many of them were devastated badly in economic terms, and they were on the path of reconstruction. Even US has launched Marshall plans to help the European countries which were badly shattered during the Second World War. As a result of these factors, most of the countries were in fact in the process of, we can say that, new development or redevelopment, or a fresh kind of development which was being pursued by large number of Afro-Asian countries. But developed countries were also pursuing reconstruction, redevelopment, whether it is US or even UK or Germany. US was of course differently positioned, but there was change in the policy shift also. A great deal of emphasis was on welfareism in state policy, and most of the developed countries pursued these policies, perhaps partly influenced by Keynes, who gave important theory about during his just before the Second World War, general theory of employment, interest, and money. But also there was a great deal of impact of some of the thought process which were there in the 30s and 40s. Particularly socialism was getting some kind of ground in across developed countries as well, and the whole ideology of a state was also changing to some extent. So, due to these factors, there was a shift towards empiricism, shift towards data collection, shift toward more authentic research, going beyond just larger political economic questions, larger theoretical questions, which were being pursued by earlier scholars from different disciplines. So, in a way, we can say that post Second World War, but also departure for social science research, social science studies, and a departure was in the sense that a great deal of emphasis was given on empiricism, on data collection, on more pursuit of more scientific research. In this context, there was also a kind of change in a discourse in social science across disciplines, that to what extent social sciences can claim to be scientific, and this resulted into a debate on objectivity versus subjectivity in social sciences. The fulcrum of debate is that many of the social scientists, when they pursued this larger scale data, when they pursued empirical studies, they started claiming that their studies are as scientific as natural sciences can claim. And they said that since they follow a rigorous method, or they follow a method which can be verified, which can be tested elsewhere as well, which has the validity aspect, which can be generalized. So the qualities of scientific research was there in there, and that was the claim. Based on this claim, they said that let us make social sciences more scientific, and at least they started claiming that social sciences are as scientific as natural sciences, because they said the element of predictability, the element of certainty, the element of saying with precision has increased in social science research because of the use of larger scale data, because of the use of new method of empiricism in social science research. But this also raised the important question whether social science could be as scientific as natural sciences. And the fundamental question is that since social sciences deal with human being and natural sciences deal with material being, how can, when you deal with human being, can you be really totally objective? Can you really be totally scientific in a way that you can remove all your understanding or your value system, all your, in a sense, what you have sent, what you have perceived, so your perception, your views, your opinion, can you really remove from when you go to the field or when you do a study, can you actually detach yourself from these value and perception which you have ingrained over a period of time being a human being? And if you are not, then can you really be scientific, or can you really be totally objective? This was the fulcrum of debate. So when they said that when we are dealing with the larger scale data, then there is no, as such, we are not dealing directly with the human behavior. Here we are dealing with the data. For example, income. Now, if somebody is doing an economist, if they are dealing with income inequality, then income inequality as such is the study of income inequality is based on large scale data, and this data is like material thing as in natural sciences. If somebody is doing some experiment in laboratory and he is using some chemicals, similarly, if somebody is studying inequality, somebody is studying the growth in GDP, he's dealing with just data. There's no human being before the researcher. So in a way, he can be as objective as he can, as natural sciences can be, because like in natural sciences where they deal with material things, here also is training in a way in material things, which doesn't have its own character, in a way that it's not a person. He's not dealing with a person. And then they said that since they are using, since due to the empiricism, due to emphasis on data collection, they are using the methods which can be applied in a very scientific manner, and they can also claim based on this that social sciences can be as natural, as scientific as natural sciences. But so far as large scale data, use of large scale data is concerned, certainly one can claim to a great extent objectivity of the data, objectivity of the method. But when you deal directly with human being, or when you deal directly with the behavior of the human being, say for example, if you are going to study society, social changes, then can you be really be very objective as you are when you are dealing with, say for example, large scale data on income or growth in GDP. Similarly, if when you're dealing with political behavior of human being, can you be really objective? And this led to a kind of criticism of the approach which emerged immediately after post Second World War. So the first approach we also call behavioral revolution, which was popular in American and some of European countries in 60s. And then there was a critique of this behavioral revolution, and then they said that there is a counter, in fact, the counter argument against the behavioral revolution, that social science research could not be as scientific as they are claiming, and let us accept the fact that we are dealing with human being, so there is always an element of subjectivity. For example, if we have to study a society, even we have larger scale data, ultimately we are dealing with human being. So being dealing with human being, you can't control your empathy, you can't control your own perception about the person, about perception about the society. uh, I'll give you just one example. When we go to study tribal society in India, and most of the tribal societies, it's part of their culture to consume liquor, which they prepare themselves. It's not some produced in factory or somewhere else and they borrow it from the market. They collect mahua, they collect some other things, and they prepare their own liquor, which is very much part of their food consumption. In a way, it's nothing special for them, nothing different from other items of food consumption. But when we outside the tribal society, when from somebody who is outside the tribal society goes there and reads this consumption of liquor as an important factor of their backwardness, then perhaps we have put our subjectivity into the study. Because being outside to the tribal society, we are not accustomed to this culture of liquor consumption. So when we see this phenomenon, immediately our value judgment comes there, and then we say that liquor consumption is not good in the tribal society, should also stop consuming liquor. But it is very much part of the society, is impacting even the whole assessment which we are going to do. So in that case, it's really challenging to study human being, their behavior, as scientific as natural sciences can do. Nonetheless, there are methods and tools, there are ways of conducting research in which you can try to be as objective as possible without completely eradicating your, without completely detaching yourself from the your subject. In natural sciences, you can completely detach from your subject, because the subject which you are dealing has no meaning. The subject which you are dealing has no value. Subject which you are dealing is not alive, but you are dealing with a subject which is alive, which has its own way of perceiving things, which has its own way of understanding things. So natural sciences has much simpler task in that way, that as far as objectivity is concerned. But in social sciences, pursuing objectively is a challenging task, and that's why we have the whole various methodological design in which we try to make our social science research as objective as possible. So as a counter revolution of behavioral science, we have a critique of objectivity in social sciences, and then the counter argument is that social sciences can't be as objective as natural sciences. Nonetheless, we can try to pursue our research in a very objective, in a very impartial manner, where we try to detach ourselves from the subject which we are going to study. I give you another example. Look at the doctors. For a doctor, from morning till evening, he looks so many patients. He looks so many. He also attends emergency ward. In emergency ward, very often there is casualty. One and two patient dies, and for doctor, it's very natural thing. When you go to this emergency ward, then on one side of whose patient has died, the entire group of relative, they are crying, they are weeping, they are inconsolable. The doctor simply comes and says that he is no more, take away. So for him, this was a patient, simply a patient. He has no attachment, because from morning till evening he is looking one and another patient and simply treats as a patient. But for the relatives of all his friends who had gone to take him for the treatment, for them an important family member has been lost, so he is inconsolable, he is weeping, he is crying. But the doctor is unmoved by that. He moves to another patient, and if another person dies, he doesn't care about that. He has, of course, an ethical question, that he has an ethical value also, that he is not indifferent to the death, but simply he has detached himself from the patient, because he has to it's part of his professional requirement. If you get impact, if he started crying like the relatives of the patient, also he won't be able to treat the another patient. So he has to detach himself from his subject and then keep doing his professional duty, and that is a matter of detachment. But in social sciences, to what extent we can really detach ourselves. Say, for example, when we go to study poor people, then there are various things which,
No.
so there are various ideas, various things which come to us. Sometimes we get moved by their pathetic condition. Sometimes we get. I give example of Nirala. Nirala was a poet. You must be knowing Nirala. And when he wrote this Vichu, a famous poem on the poor people, the rag pickers, when they collect even wasted food from the street and the dog starts walking on them. It's a marvelous poem, and it's very moving poem. We also see these things, but we couldn't attach ourselves to this phenomenon. Nirala got empathy with the poor people, and then he wrote a whole poem. So here Nirala is not objective in a way, because he has been moved by the condition of the rag picker. But every day in our life we see the rag pickers, but we don't get moved. So, but in the social sciences, when we have to pursue some study, there we can't be totally detached and we can't be totally attached also. But when we pursuing some subject matter with certain objectives, certain methodology, we should try to keep ourselves as objective as possible, and in that way our study would be more scientific. We can say that whatever the findings we are producing, whatever the findings we are sharing with the others, has some validity, can be generalized, can be tested elsewhere, and where my value and perceptions, I have tried to control my value and perception. In a way, I have tried to detach from the subject, and then I can claim, or we can claim, that the study is a scientific study. So this, given this debate there, and given the emphasis on objectivity in social sciences research, as a researcher, we should try to pursue our study as objectively as possible. At the same time, I would also suggest that we should not lose certain values, certain principles. We should not be in a way lose sight of pathetic condition of the people. We should try to, but we should try to bring that condition in a way that our research creates some impact, but without putting our own value system, without making ourselves as a subject matter there. As an outsider, we will still remain as an outsider, but the way we will try to portray the things that will create impact. That to that extent, subjectivity to certain extent is also acceptable. That because we are finally promoting the cause, and if we are not promoting the cause, then what is the purpose of research? So our purpose of research should be something for the promotion of the good of the society, welfare of the society. And if our research leads to such kind of promotion of either goods of society or welfare of society, then our research we can say that is much more useful and much more purposeful than the research which is just for self promotion or just for the sake of pursuing research. And for that matter, we have to balance between objectivity and subjective. Since we deal with human being in social sciences, we can't be totally objective, but we should not be subjective in a negative terms. We should be subjective in a positive terms to influence the policy, to influence the, to bring to the attention the law, the problem in society. Their subjectivity can be acceptable, but subjectivity which is something which looks partial, which looks biasness, which looks like a kind of prejudiced view, should not be there. And with these words, I end here and thank you all of you for inviting me to share my thought with you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vikas.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful presidential remark. So, participants, now session is open. So you can ask the question to Professor Pankaj sir and Professor Madhuballa madam. Sir and madam will try to address your question. Only few questions we will take. Any participants, if you have any doubt? Okay, hello participants, can you listen me? If you have any questions, what is the APA style? Indubala. Sir, Indubala is asking that what? Yes, Amita. Yes,
सर कोई दिक्कत
Amita,
नहीं
You want to ask something?
नहीं नहीं सर कोई दिक्कत नहीं है अभी तक तो
Okay,
सेशन
okay,
है जी सर
okay. So one question, sir. Madhuballa has asked, what is the APA style? Pankaj, sir.
क्या विकास, what is the question? वो तो style का है. There are various styles
Yes, sir. It's
of
very
referencing.
yes.
So Harvard follows its own style. Chicago has its own style. Then some of the associations, American Psychological Association, American Political Science Association, they also follow some style. So there are various styles of doing referencing, and depends on where you are submitting, what you are submitting. They clearly mention that you follow this style. So you better look into some, just Google the style sheets of various prevalent style sheets.
Thank you, sir.
Sir, we have also mentioned in our schedule one separate lecture for the regarding the style, referencing style. So, sir, one question, Professor, Ram Pratap Singh Raghav want to ask: if we are dealing with the quasi-experiment research, if we are dealing with a quasi-experiment research, as we know that random sampling is not possible in this case, then how will be try to reduce the biases and how will be increase the validity in this case.
Now, quasi-experimental research has come from medical sciences in social sciences. And this is also a matter of like a pursuit of social science research in a more scientific manner. And this control random trial, this is basically quasi-experimental research design. So what you do in this research is that you have two group of population for observation. In one group of population, you make some intervention, and another group of population, you don't make any intervention. So leave as it is. When you make some intervention with one group of population, then you measure the changes or measure the result of your intervention over a period of time. And at the same time, you also measure the condition of the group which is constant, condition which is control group. You have not made any intervention or anything else in that group. So when you measure the changes in the group where you have made intervention with the group which is control group where you have not made intervention, then you compare both the groups, the changes in both the group, and then you come to the conclusion because of your intervention in the group which was under trial, you have got this result, and that validates the intervention. That shows you a strength of intervention, weaknesses of a strength, and what else can be done. And really, this intervention is efficacious or not. So that is the quasi-experimental design. In medical sciences, when you must have read during this COVID vaccine, when the COVID vaccine was created. Doctors or scientists were testing first in laboratory, then on human being also. Of course, it was not done as rigorously as they normally do. But some of the vaccine they test for 10 years, 15 years to see the result. They test on a group of people first. First they test, they have different way of testing. Sometimes they test on mice, sometimes they test on some animals, then they test on human being also. And if they test on human being and then they have the result, which they compare with one control group, then they see that okay, if after vaccination this group was exposed to certain infection and then this vaccine prevented infection in that group, that means this vaccine is working. But the other group which has not been vaccinated, and if he's exposed to the infection, then he catches that group catches infection. That means the vaccine has efficacy. This vaccine has been this vaccine can be given to a human being. This kind of experiment we have borrowed from the medical sciences in social sciences, and being doing or we are doing this experiment in poverty eradication in social welfare program, and we see the impact of intervention on the people, and that helps us in policy making. Now sample, it's not that it can't be sample. Actually such kind of this is, you can do it only in a sample, on a small sample. You can't do it the inverse of the population, so you have to select a sample.
Thank you so much, sir. I think here are two questions. Nalini Sharma and Himanshu Tripathi. So, Madhu ma'am, are you here? Madhu Bhalla ma'am, Madhu Bhalla ma'am, can you listen us? Hello, Madhu ma'am. Okay. Madhu ma'am. Please unmute yourself, ma'am. Madhu ma'am, I think you are mute. Please unmute yourself, ma'am. Ma'am, please unmute. Yes, yes. आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है मैम, मधु मैम. मधु मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही है। वन मिनट। मैम आप म्यूट हैं और आपकी आवाज हम आपको सुन नहीं पा रहे हैं। आप मैम रीज्वाइन, आप एक बार लेफ्ट होकर के ज्वाइन करिए, शायद कुछ इशू है, टेक्निकल इशू है कुछ। ओके पंकज सर, आप सुन पा रहे हैं मुझको?
हाँ, सुन रहा हूँ विकास, बोल।
ओके ओके, आई थिंक मैम की तरफ कुछ टेक्निकल इशू है, वो ज्वाइन करेंगे। सर आप यदि क्वेश्चन सर पढ़ पा रहे हैं चैट बॉक्स में तो
चैट बॉक्स में
तो हिमांशु त्रिपाठी का क्वेश्चन है और आई थिंक वो आईआर से है। अगर मैम आएंगी तो उनको बाद में मैम उसको एड्रेस करेंगी। सो हिमांशु का क्वेश्चन हाइपोथेसिस से रिलेटेड है सर, सो आई रिक्वेस्ट टू यू प्लीज एड्रेस दिस। यस सर। You want to ask sir, what is the correct manner to test hypothesis and data analysis for an interpretative methodology?
Look, hypothesis testing, whether we really need hypothesis for a research.
मधु मैम आई थिंक अभी भी म्यूट हैं आप। मधु मैम आप अभी भी म्यूट हैं।
Let me respond to Vikas, then you can just...
Yes sir, please sir, please.
Hypothesis, whether we, my submission is that do we really need a hypothesis or not for doing social science research? The real issue in social science research is how do you frame your question or the problem. If you have rightly framed your questions and you have rightly posed your problems, then in my view, hypothesis is something which is rather binds you to pursue your research in a proper manner and can be dispensed with altogether. For example, when you start to study with certain hypothesis, the tendency is that either you want to test, either you want to prove, or you want to reject this hypothesis. So in both way, you have already decided the course of your study, that you are going to prove it or you're going to reject it. So in a way, hypothesis, I personally feel that it controls your research. It doesn't allow you free space which you could have done when pursuing research without hypothesis. But if you have to, but for just a pursuit for hypothesis building, I would suggest that you better frame your question properly. You raise them. A fundamental challenge in social science research is that what problem you have picked up and how you have pursued this, what questions you have. Now, asking right questions is more important than building a hypothesis. Because to build an hypothesis, first thing that in a way you have already done half research. How will you build hypothesis? It can't be built purely in air. To build a hypothesis, you must have some data first. You must have some literature. You must have reviewed some and must have done some thorough work on that. Only then you can build your own hypothesis, which is different from the existing observation or existing findings. Only then your hypothesis will add any value. In a way, you have already done, say, more than 50% of work, and then you have your own hypothesis which you want to test. In that case, hypothesis building is, of course, useful. But without doing all these things, you build a hypothesis and then you just pursue the hypothesis, then I personally feel that it's a wrong way of pursuing the research, because it controls your research and your research becomes direction. You move in a particular direction which is already determined by the hypothesis. So what is the next question? Is there any? Anyway.
Yes, sir. Madhu ma'am, if you are able to
Yes.
address the question. Okay, okay,
Yes.
ma'am. Yes, one question related to the IR,
Mm-hmm.
Nalini Sharma. If,
Mm-hmm.
yes. Hello, ma'am. As a student of
Yes.
IR, I want to ask, can you briefly describe how to increase chances of paper acceptance in high quality journal, like what are does and doesn't special for young research scholars like me?
Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you
Yes,
hear
ma'am.
me? Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
You know, what we are looking for, what I have been looking for uh, on in papers that have come across my desk as editor of India Quarterly is um, are papers that have a very clear uh, that define a problem very clearly. Okay, so define your problem, define your question, and just make sure that it is not a question that has already been defined by multiple authors and papers written by multiple authors around that, right? If you want to raise an old question, then you must have new resources, new research that adds to that debate on that issue. Okay? If you don't have new archives or new research sources, and you are merely raising an old question, then I will just put it aside as something that has already been done. Okay? So if it's already in the public domain, if it has already been done, if it's repetitive of established research, we will not look at it. Okay, no research journal will look at it. But if you have an old question that for which you have new resources and you can evolve a new interpretation or a new conclusion, then we will look at that, right? Secondly, I think your research should be really above par, right? You really must have a handle on uh, the sources in the area and be able to discuss these very clearly and cognitively. Okay. Thirdly, I think your writing, your packaging should be excellent. We have often got, potentially good papers, but so poorly written that we would have to rewrite them to make them publishable. And so, therefore, we either suggest that the author take them back and rewrite them, or ask somebody to look at them and edit them for us, for the author, and then send them back to us. But we will not rewrite papers. Okay, so the packaging is of some consequence, because how you express yourself, how you present your argument, adds to the validity of your paper and to the value of your paper. So do that. Thirdly, a lot of younger scholars make huge grammatical mistakes, and I don't know why that is so. Because if you have read extensively, your language ability should really be on par. But clearly, there is a gap there between what you are reading and what you are writing, and how you are writing. So, how you write really should be excellent, because we get papers from abroad which are very well written. Actually, African writers, Nigerian writers write so well. Why can't Indians who speak English all the time write well, right? Why can't you who read English texts and English books, your sources in English, write better than your writing, right? So I would expect that totality of these things. First, define your problem. If it is a problem well defined, it will stand out. If it is a problem that is fresh and new and has new resources, that will also stand out. If it is an older problem that relies on newer sources, that will also stand out. And if it is well written, that will be perfect, right? So just keep this in mind. And when you're writing a paper, you will know where you want your paper to be positioned. If you want your paper to be positioned in existing research, in existing debates, where exactly do you want your paper to be positioned, right? Are you making a breakthrough in existing debates? Are you adding to that debate? Are you raising an entirely new debate, right? That would be very exciting. So Many of these issues, I think, if, when you write, you must keep in mind. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So the next question, what are the technique in social science to control the confounding variables? I think Professor Pankaj sir will address this question.
Mhm.
Pankaj sir? Yes.
Uh, I couldn't. Wait a second. Uh, can you repeat the एक मिनट राग राम
Yes,
प्रताप.
sir. हाँ हाँ। और अभी सर का टेक्निकल कुछ तो मैं एक बार अगर हिंदी मीडियम
नहीं,
वाले भी कोई पार्टिसिपेंट्स पूछना चाहते हैं तो आप लोग हिंदी में भी पूछ सकते हैं. नो इशू. आवर गेस्ट विल
can
एड्रेस
you
योर क्वेश्चन.
Ram Pratap,
Sir,
can you
what are the
specify no,
techniques?
I got the question. Oh, because I got
What,
the I
sir,
can read
sir,
the
what are
question.
the
I've got it. Because hold on, because
okay, sir, okay, okay,
Ram
sure.
Pratap, can you specify what do you mean by confounding variables?
Okay. Ram Pratap Singh Raghav, can you specify? हाँ, आप अनम्यूट करके भी राम प्रताप बोल सकते हैं, कोई इशू नहीं. कंफाउंडिंग वेरिएबल्स. राम प्रताप, हमें सुन पा रहे हैं आप? That doesn't impact the result directly. सर इनका मतलब है कि that doesn't impact the result directly.
नहीं, वो फर्स्ट थिंग इज दैट कि वेरिएबल्स का किस प्रॉब्लम को लेके कौन से वेरिएबल को आप सेलेक्ट करते हैं वो सबसे इंपॉर्टेंट होता है. अगर सपोज करें कि मेरा प्रॉब्लम कुछ और है, कुछ आई एंड आई हैव सेलेक्टेड ए वेरिएबल व्हिच हैज रिमोट कनेक्ट प्रॉब्लम or which has some kind of peripheral relation with the variable, but the variable doesn't have prominent relation or dominant relation with our problem, then ideally we should not get into those variables, because any research has some time and cost factor. It increases your time and increases your cost factor, so better to avoid that. And that, for that matter, technique is very important, method is very important, that which variable you have selected and how you have selected variable depends on how you have posed your problem, what research questions you have formed or you have thrown for research. And according to that research question, you must pick up your variable, but variable which has not direct relation, because in this world you look, everything is in a way we can relate to, most of the things can be related, but relations should be close enough that this variable bears some impact on your research question. So the best way to control the variable is to go by your problem, go by your research question, that what research questions you have posed, what is your problem. And you must examine it first, but whether this variable will have really an impact or relation with the problem which you have posed or not. If it is unlikely, then better to drop that variable. Otherwise, what will happen that you have collected, and I have seen the researchers that they canvas 10 pages questions, but only 2 pages of that questionnaire can be, or the data which they have collected can be used. The rest 8 pages become redundant because they have no or very remote connection with the problem. So that is the best way to control selection of variable, that you go by the problem which you have defined and go by the research questions you have framed. Is it clear,
Okay.
Ram Pratap?
Thank you so much, sir. Ram Pratap? Yes, yes, sir.
ठीक है, let me.
Okay, okay.
Any
So,
question?
thank you so much, sir. हाँ, और किसी का कोई
ठीक है.
क्वेश्चन है? Any? Yes. और किसी पार्टिसिपेंट्स के पास कोई क्वेश्चन? हाँ, हाँ, yes, yes.
सर एक क्वेश्चन था मेरा कि रिसर्च पेपर या थीसिस जो लिखते हैं वो प्रेजेंट में लिखना चाहिए कि पास्ट टेंस में?
Depending on the subject depending on the subject, and it can be, now for example, you are writing something which has which happened in the past. So how will you write it in present form? But something which you are describing in a way, or making your own observation and statement, that can be in present form. So nothing like a kind of a rule that what you write in, you have to basically follow how you express yourself. So that means um, how you write it down, how you express it, and simply have to follow the rule of grammar. That's something which, suppose that you are dealing, we are saying that something happened ago, but you can't write in present form. So basically, I would suggest that you go by the rules of grammar. There is nothing very specific, but there are some certain things which can be explained in present form, and some of the people, for example, also explain in the past form. For example, I'm interpreting those data, I'm writing those data. I can write in the present form also. I can write in the present form, can't be written in the past form. So depending on the what data you are writing, what in what context you are writing, and there is not a kind of rule for that you have to write in present or past. It's basically you have to follow the rule of writings, and that is governed by, one is the rule of grammar, and secondly that how you have to express your ideas.
जी सर, थैंक यू।
Is it clear or?
जी सर, धन्यवाद सर।
ओके ओके ठीक है राम प्रताप, अभी हम इस क्वेश्चन को लेंगे, पंकज सर एड्रेस करेंगे आपके क्वेश्चन को। मधु भल्ला मैम, आप हैं यहाँ पे अभी? मधु भल्ला मैम, आई थिंक वन, हाँ मैम, सपरा हसन वांट टू आस्क यू, आई एम रीडिंग द क्वेश्चन। Dr. Madhu Bhalla ma'am, please tell us how to read a book critically to get the best out of it, as you have suggested in your lecture. मैम आप म्यूट है मैम, प्लीज अनम्यूट योरसेल्फ मैम।
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes ma'am. Yes.
Okay, wonderful. So, when we read a book, no book, every book is a part of a debate, right? Or it is in response to something else that somebody has written before, right? Or it's in response to some action that has taken place before, right? Some act that has taken place before. So, if we can place the book in that context, in the context of the debate of which it is a part, or of the event of which it is a part, then we should be looking at what claims the author is making in the book about the book itself. Okay? And most authors, in their introduction or in their prologue, will tell you what they intend to do in the book, right? Now, when authors tell you that, as you read the book, you should be able to test whether they have actually, answered the claims that they have made. Okay, if they have not, answered the claims that they have made in the book, you must question why they haven't done so. Secondly, I think the level of information that they give you in the book you should be able to assess whether that is adequate to answering the claims that they have made. Okay, and if you can place the book in the context of a larger act or of a larger debate, then you should be able to assess whether the author has done that convincingly. Okay, so these are the three questions. These are some of the issues that you need to keep in mind as you read the book. And if the author has done that, the book is a good one. If the author has not done that or partially done that, then it raises questions about the book and about where the author's argument is going. And if the author has not positively engaged with the debate, the context in which the book is situated, then you need to question that as well. Okay, so that is what I mean by critical reading of a book.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Mhm.
Sapraji, hello, Safra Hassan ji.
Hello, Shapara.
Okay,
Okay, she's left.
okay.
Okay,
Shapra,
that's
can you
fine.
listen us? Okay. So, पंकज सर, वीनू गुप्ता जी के यदि क्वेश्चन आपने पढ़ लिया हो तो प्लीज एड्रेस.
Um,
She want to ask that, sir, I have a question. In a writing research thesis, what
that
should
is
be the
almost
mode of?
answered.
Yes,
No, it's almost
yes.
answered that there is no. I have already answered this question. I think she should follow that. It is the same question. It's repetition. And even
Okay,
when you write review chapter or you write interpret data, you have to follow the same rule. Go by the rule
okay,
of grammar. Go by the what subject you are describing, in which context you are describing. This present and past tense doesn't have anything to teach about that.
okay, sure. So one question, sir. Address the issue of data analysis in the interpretative paradigm.
But I feel that there is a lot of confusion. You, I,
Okay,
about
yes, sir. हिमांशु, आप अपने क्वेश्चन को रिपीट कर
just
सकते
hold
हैं?
on,
आप
Vikas,
आप
hold on. So what I
okay,
am
sure.
going by your questions now, you have mostly questions related to like the terminology and so these various terminologies used in the textbook of research methodology have really confused you or confounded you as well. Many of the things now interpretive method is a way of doing research. Now everything which you collect from the field is a data. In a way, it's data. uh, Data is not simply in terms of number. Data is also simply in terms of also in terms of narrative, also in terms of a statement. That is also data. It's not like, so how you interpret it, and this is his questions. And there is a whole approach of in methodology research methodology paper. You must have been taught about various method, interpretive methods, phenomenological methods, but all these things seems to have confounded you unnecessarily, which is not going to help. What you really need to do is that, you see, in interpretive method, what you do is that you interpret the phenomenon. That we do in all research. It's nothing like something which we certain phenomenon, certain things, certain facts need interpretation, and we do it actually. In interpretation, what you do is that the data is there, whether data is in the form of some numericals or whether data is in the form of some statement or sentences, we interpret it, and we interpret it objectively. That is social science research. That we don't put our own value system while interpreting the data, whether it is a statement or whether it is number. So all data have to be interpreted, but it has to be interpreted in an objective manner without putting your own value, without putting your own subjectivity into the subject.
Okay.
Any further, or let us close because by one.
Yes, sir. हाँ, lunch time होने वाला है. So just I would like to invite Shubhangi Amle, co-convener of this workshop, for the formal vote of thanks. Over to you, Shubhangi.
Thank you, sir. Namaste and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shubhangi Amle, and I am a research scholar from Maharashtra. It's my privilege to deliver the vote of thanks at the inaugural session of our e-workshop on innovative research methodologies for emerging academics. First and foremost, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to our keynote speaker, Professor R.S. Yadav, sir, for gracing this occasion and delivering an enlightening keynote address. Your insights into the emerging importance of innovative research methodologies have set the perfect tone for this workshop. I also wish to express my sincere thanks to our chief guest, Professor Madhu Bhalla ma'am, for sparing their valuable time to be with us today. Your expert perspectives on research methodologies have provided a strong foundation for the sessions to come. A special note of gratitude goes to our President, Professor Ashok Pankaj sir. Your words of throughout the event and in future as well. I would also like to thank the organizing committee for their efforts in planning and executing this event. Finally, I extend my heartfelt thanks to all the participants. Your presence and dedication are what make this workshop a success. With that, I conclude my vote of thanks. May this workshop provide valuable insights and foster innovative ideas in research. Thank you all.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Okay, sir. Thank you. Pranams.